features of fully gloved operations because of just that's the way it needs to be at the moment. As people started to request no keyboards, we needed to invest and start to think about how they would continue to use them, when they continue to use them. So complete glove operation, complete moisture operations, no problems at all.
Right, and my second question is, it looks like to me this is the last step before wearables.
Well, we've had wearables since 1992, as in a wearable technology. I think you may find it is the next evolution of wearables.
Yeah. So in what situation would this not be more productively replaced by something very wearable on the head or similar?
Still from a scanning and a data entry perspective, there's still a need for that. I mean, as we start to think about integrating voice with wearable, I mean, the ability to actually scan by thought is something we have been testing and processing. I'm going to stand up if you don't mind, just so that I've been involved in our heavy R&D operations for quite a while, and we've got some proof ideas about mind thought, about winking to fire a scanner and that type of thing. When you think about positive data entry and positive identification of items, scanning is still the best way to do that. Calling out a check digit, I can tell you of a very large retailer, won't mention which one of the two, that they have check digit sheets that are being sold for $5 in their warehouse for their voice picking. It's down to $5 now. So, and that's really where it is. So when you start to think about using voice and check digits and that type of thing, the only true verification of where a device is to have a physical device, be it connected to the Wi-Fi and scanning a barcode. We think that the next level of wearable and that type of technology will be a form of glasses or a form of a display, a ring scanner, something like that as we move forward. But when you still come to the level of scanning that the likes of Toll need to do and that type of thing, something from a glasses perspective, that positive attitude and that positive reinforcement is still probably about 10 years off.
You still need the trigger.
Yeah, well, the difference though here with this is, just to give you a bit of an idea that from the trigger, and you can play with it, you've got the two-piece trigger, there's also a little button underneath it,
yes,
which you can see me pointing to here. That can actually be, and was done by Toll, and we hadn't thought of this, it was actually during the trial, that became the enter key. So that what they did was they scanned and entered, and that
they
was,
have to do
well, that was for an acknowledgement movement. You don't have to depending on the software, but people were always used to touching the screen and they're having to come through. But here it just became a second. And once you start to practice it, so it's that positive mention, but this does have what's called a proximity sensor. So it will detect that it's near a barcode and actually enable the barcode and that type of thing. So when you set it in a trolley or set it on a pick trolley or something like that. So where you're suggesting about wearables, yes, definitely we are progressing down that path. I think I'll still be with the company probably when we do get to that next level, but the real wearable with smart glasses and mind-controlled scan triggers, I might have even retired by the time that becomes a reality.
And when you say that the glasses would be a lot more expensive right now than repurposing a smartphone with your technologies?
Well, if you think about what glasses really do, have you ever used the Google glasses? So I use them and everything else, and where it comes from, how do you actually see and acknowledge? I mean, when you're still looking at a display, you think of a standard pick order.
You still need something in your hand to click on something, to do something.
Yeah.
Otherwise you've got to tap your glasses and...
Yeah, you got it. That's what I'm saying.
It's a different productivity problem.
It's a completely different product.
Yeah.
When we get that
Or
mind connection,
yeah.
and as I said, we are testing with that, and it was a prototype piece that was done, that when you're sort of wearing 12 sort of mind sensors and that type of thing.
But where I see the difference is that if you have the wearable, you free up your hand.
Yeah, we've had, as I said, we've had wearables since 1992 where you have two free hands. You have a scanner trigger that'll automatically operate into your hand. But that's fine if you're just doing what we call, say, an induction scan. So if a customer is just scanning a barcode into an item and doesn't have to do anything with it, that's completely the quickest, simplest and fastest way to operate. As soon as there needs to be user intervention, and I'll ask Gavin and that from Toll to comment on that at the moment, as soon as you need that, you've got to look at the phone, look at whatever device, get it out of your pocket to actually interact, and the productivity gain gets reduced. If it's just scan, 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 and a lot of our freight operators do that, but they just use that as pure induction scanning. They don't do any data, they don't do any data validation around that. Can we do it?
Yeah, and what I'd add to that, our experience with voice, for example, so hands-free voice type technologies is, unless you're actually picking a product that requires two hands to pick,
Right.
there's not a lot of scenarios where it's more quicker to pick with voice than it is with a scanner like a TC8000. Now, most of our picking is to carton level, open the carton, pull a toothbrush out, for example, right? Anything else that's more bulky than that is usually a forklift operator with full pallet operation, right? So again, you go back to...
What about full carton?
Well, we do some full carton, but again, we normally use a forklift operator to do that, and most of the activity happens before the scan process occurs. So the time it takes to scan the product, be it over voice command or over scan command, is such a minimal amount of the whole travel path that it doesn't matter. But it does work sometimes, to be fair. There are certain profiles where it works.
Absolutely, yeah.
In Europe in particular, where you've got a lot more volume, you do tend to get a lot more profiles where you can, it can be agreeable to using voice technology, and you can get the scale to buy enough voice units to keep your unit cost down. So,
I mean, there's also customers that have got high volume pick faces where they're using pick to light. But that's typically when you've only got a single operator who's picking from one of 10 items at any one point, and they're only working on a zone that's as wide as these two tables. But when you start, a lot of the Australian logistics operators, people don't do zone picks.
yeah.
They still do an entire order pick rather than a zone pick.
Yeah.
And zone picking is where voice and pick to light really excels, but we just don't have that volume at the moment. I mean, you've got one of the largest operators, if not the largest operator here in Australia, in this room, and they're saying the same thing.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
That's okay. Anybody else while we're standing up? No, not for you. Okay.
So you couldn't do all of these things with iOS, for example? Was there more freedom in Android for various system level things? And
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's the same reason at the moment, honestly, why we've gone down Android and not stayed with Microsoft. I mean, we have a dual OS strategy, both Microsoft and Android, but the ability to actually do custom form factor, custom applications, root level access, those type of things that we need to do enterprise grade designs. That's why we can't do it with iOS.
I mean, your Windows devices must still be Windows CE.
We're
Yeah,
on Windows CE
yeah.
and 653. We do have a Windows 10 product coming out middle of this year. What we're seeing from Microsoft, that looks like it's going to be able to do what it needs to do.
So will that be basically a Windows version of the T800? Or?
No, it'll be a Windows version of what's called our TC7075 form factor, which is the PDA form factor. Microsoft is still dictating form factor like Apple do,
Yeah.
where Android don't. We can give you an Android wearable. We have a new Android wearable due out at the end of this year. I can give you embedded Android modules. It's one of the reasons why Android actually works really well for us as a hardware vendor, because it gives us the uniqueness to build it how we want it. We can embed it in kiosks, we've done it in vehicle devices, terminals, this type of thing, where both Microsoft and Apple actually say it's got to be a candy bar, it's got to be this size, it's got to have this form factor, you can't do this with it. So that's one of the reasons that we made the choice probably about 5 years ago to invest very, very heavily in Android. We now have in offerings about 8 different form factors that are all Android based. We actually did a bit of work last year in educating our customers about the end of life coming up with Windows CE and Windows Mobile 653, and sort of started to talk about you need to start to migrate now. Microsoft's continued that legacy support until 2020, but there will be nothing beyond there. And that's why we were out sort of end of last year saying to people, like, in 5 years' time, this is going to go away. You need to start to think about how you're going to support your business as you move forward. And I think that's one of the reasons you guys went to Android, wasn't it, Gavin? Just as that future proofing.
Yeah, exactly.
So you must have customers wanting to take up this new unit globally.
Oh, we absolutely. Toll was, as Gavin mentioned, Toll was one of our launch partners, and they actually started working with this when we got to the point of we designed the product, we went out to market and got some interest, and Toll goes, yeah, we really like that. So they were what we call an alpha customer. So they
helped you design it.
Yeah. Oh no, not quite helped
No.
us design it. No, we'd already designed it.
Yeah.
So they were part of the research piece, but they were the part of the living, breathing piece. So You know, the amount of firmware.
They helped you
upgrades.
beta test it.
They were pre-beta testing.
Yeah.
That's the alpha.
Alpha testing.
Yeah.
Alpha, yeah.
They were our alpha customer. They helped us prove it out. As we said, we had that trigger, that second button, and we actually didn't know why it was there and how it was. And it was actually one of the toll test operators for us that was still touching the screen. We're like, well, we could just create that, and that's become sort of the way it's now done. So
might there be a third or fourth button in future
there could be.
models?
There could be if we needed to. At the moment, because we can make that button do whatever we want it to do based on the screen, there's actually no real need to have that. So if you're in a data entry field that it needs to be enter because it's programmatically controlled, it's an enter key. If you're at another screen, it can be the back key. It could be the escape key, it could be an F3 key, because the beautiful thing of using the multi-threading pieces of Android OS is we can sit there and program that key to be whatever we want it to be in whatever screen we want it to be. I mean, Gavin was saying before, you know, what was the old operational steps? Like F3, F2?
Yes, that's right. So, yeah, for example, if you're halfway through a pick and you decide, geez, I've scanned the wrong location or I've picked the wrong product, to back out of that was a several button process using a combination of escape keys and F5 keys, etc., etc. Well, now with the touchscreen facility, it's just a simple macro command to create a touchscreen button that says cancel order at any particular time. So your variation management and the accuracy around that variation management is much more improved.
And your customizability.
Yeah. And that's one of the big benefits for us as well. Even post-launch on this, we're one of the very few organisations, including Zebra, who understand how to configure these things really efficiently now as we go to launch these into our own operating environments.
So you've got to remember that one of the benefits to Toll around taking to this device and moving to the next technology was they didn't change their freight management system or their warehouse management system. They took their old traditional green screen terminal emulation, used all touch tier, and actually rewrote the screens. And I think Andy said it was about 150 screens that were rewritten to be all touch. But so there was nothing on the back end. It was all done through the handheld and the user experience.
And that would have been very quick to do. Relatively
quick, Andy, you said?
It's about a week turnaround.
Yeah, which is amazing.
Yeah. As we said, so that was to take it from traditional green screen to where it's set, but there was no back end cost. There was no Toll had to come out with their next generation warehouse management system. They may be thinking of that, and I don't know, but at the moment they're able to use their legacy system, but protect and future-proof their products by moving to an all-touch type device.
And what's the price difference between the old unit and this new unit?
From what I understand, I'm going to ask Gavin and Brett to comment, but from our general marketing perspective, it's around the same price. We didn't.
I mean, units break down over time anyway; they have to be replaced. So, I mean, it's
so
not a higher cost.
when we traditionally launch a new product, we tried to hold the price point of the older product as it sort of goes forward. So it's not a 4 times increase of price just to move to the newer technology. Is that a fair answer,
Yeah,
Gavin?
absolutely. Yeah, we're seeing fairly similar numbers as well. But remember, for us, you know, a unit is effectively a person, right? In terms of you don't have the need for a scanner if you don't have the need for a person. So, you know, the costs of a unit like this that has more advanced features versus the productivity savings you'll get from a total cost of ownership perspective, if you like.
It's a no-brainer.
negligible. Yeah.
I mean, we deployed this with our partner, who's our Toll's partner as well, because Zebra is a 100% channel organisation, so we go to market via our reseller channel. One of the gentlemen from my team worked with Toll's business partners to help develop the screens and to help that delivery, but it was a real partnership. And I mean, Toll's been one of our customers since early 2000s, since Toll purchased a lot of the old Main Nicholas businesses when Main Nicholas spread out. And you know, we've always had that sort of partnership. It's been not a bleeding edge partnership, but a leading edge partnership on how we can move forward. We've got a lot of new technologies that are coming up that will help revolutionise further the transport industry, and we're expecting to be doing a lot more of this and partnering with Toll around how that can move by changing to the next step. You know, things like mobile dimension and those type of future features that are going to just change the way the industry is moving now and as it moves forward. I mean, in 99, 2000, it was sign on glass. I was heavily involved in that, so it was Edge GPRS radios and sign on glass. Main Nicholas and the Ward Skyroad business, which is now Toll Priority, were the first business to ever introduce sign on glass POD. no transport data, but it was all about where it sat. The business benefit of that was the ability for the customer to see the POD by the next day, instead of waiting for it to be scanned and everything else. Now, and I'm sure Gavin will say, it's table stakes. No transport operator would go to a company now and not say, I've got live data tracking and POD.
Yeah, that's right.
So it's going to be those next levels of steps.
So what happens to all the old units? Do you have a recycling program? Or?
Yeah, we have a green electronics recycling program around removing metals and all that type of thing. We really are very heavily into that from a disposal perspective of when products come into us. I'm not sure what happens from the toll perspective with their old products, but any product that comes to Zebra is completely green. We have a very major green recycling program.
Yeah.
Do you expect to have the same problem with Google upgrading the operating system
No.
as you did with Windows CE?
No, Google can continue to upgrade the operating system as much as they want to. We have the control and the availability to release the OSs as we want to, and we actually publish back to our customers that we will not be on the latest OS. So at the moment that device is running KitKat, we've got Lollipop Chew that come out, well that one actually may have already been upgraded to Lollipop. We typically are holding about 12 months.
What if they introduce steps that don't fit well with your desired
We would hold a revolution if we needed to. We evaluate whether or not we have to release the next version of Android, and it's all about actually understanding what business features it releases. So if all of a sudden they come through and put out a whole heap of stuff that's all about consumer functionality and features, we could quite happily say, no, we're not going to release that version.
But then you risk ending up staying with an old version of the Google operating system like you did with CE and
Yeah, we will take that risk, but that risk will be done on a commercial basis. I mean, you've got to be brutally honest, if we'd gone to Windows 8, we probably wouldn't still have a real industry. We all know how much of a success that was, and I think we as an industry were quite smart in ourselves and our fellow competitors in not moving to Windows 8.
not the Windows 10 is even worse.
Well, that's why, if you notice, we haven't released anything, and we are actually waiting for the IoT version of Windows 10 before we even release any products. That's why we will not have a Windows 10 product until the second half of this year.
Right.
We are waiting on Microsoft's IoT drop of Windows 10 because the current version of Windows 10 is not enterprise ready. It's not ready for the devices that we need it to go out into place with. That's why Microsoft is releasing the IoT version. Everybody can see about it on the web. Everybody's seeing it. We all know the features that it needs, and when we know that that's ready, we will release products. So we've designed around it. We have chipsets, we have memory, we have processors, we have everything ready to roll, but we don't have a drop of the OS that we're prepared to take out to our customers.
Are you doing your own security updates on Android?
Yes, we do.
Yeah. So security is not an issue if you've got your own programmers.
So we do all our own security updates, all our own enhancements, all our own features, all the FIPS encryption, all that is all Zebra. So we control that. We don't rely on Google for any part of it except for the main core. And it's the core OS that we take from them, and everything else we do ourselves.
I'm just waiting for the day when there will be a Zebra OS.
Well, I mean, this is kind of it. This
It
customized
is.
version of Android is it.
I was about to say, we refer to things called MX, which is our extensions, so the Zebra extensions that sit on top of Android. And that's why I said it's not like a Samsung OS, and I thank Alex about that, because the version of Android that we release is our version. It's got our security, it's got our enhancements, and we're the ones that are responsible for it. When there's a release and there's a security vulnerability, we go out, we repair it, and we release it. But we also don't have to wait and rely on our lovely telcos to push it out for us or anything like that. And our customers don't need to do that either. Our customers can decide which version they want to release and when they want to release it. We always ask our customers that if we release a hot fix or a patch to be within 2 releases, because then we can always do support and everything else. But that's all about us and our customers and our partners deciding when an OS update comes down, not just to say, bang, there's an OS update that has to go through.
You could release a consumer version of your operating system that sits on top of Android. A lot of people are looking for stability.
Yeah, I understand the statement, and the stability that we implement from an enterprise perspective would be there. The consumer features and the consumer functionality and the holes that sit there, I think you'll find that Samsung, I think, is doing a pretty good job of releasing a pretty good consumer version of Android, personally. I mean, that's one of the ones that I think is doing a reasonable job of it. I think the others will catch up. You know, but it's all about how it sits. And you are correct, there are so many vulnerabilities. I sit there and run some vulnerability test tools and say to people, even on iOS devices, look at all the holes you've got on your device, and they're like, no, I don't. I don't have any applications. And then I start to show them, and they're like, wow. Just the things that sit there through GMS, if you know much about Android and where it is, just allowing that two-way functionality and all of that data control. That's the type of things that we have to hold out. You know, the Zebra OS allows you only to have the applications you want on the home screen. It allows you to sandbox all of your data. You can encrypt the entire device, you can encrypt all your SD cards. You don't have to have anything exposed to the user that you don't want exposed. So that's the sort of enterprise features that we set up. So quite literally, Tile have one application on the front of their screen, and that's it. They can't get to anything else. Those of our customers that use our wide area Android devices are the same thing. They say, here's the device where it is. They don't allow anything else to go on to it.
You don't want them playing Candy Crush anyway.
You don't really. I mean, but these days it seems to be not just around the Candy Crush, but it's around the other apps that people are doing. It's not just games anymore, it's about the personal pieces.
Social media, all sorts of things. Yeah.
You know,
They've got their own device for that.
The WhatsApp, the Viber, and those sort of things. It's interesting because some of our customers said, we want to have the ability to do voice calls.
Yeah, or
want
voice over IP.
Well, that's what we do. So we have a voice over IP push-to-talk telephony call that allows freight customers like that to use the data network to transmit that data to replace their radio networks without exposing the SIM, the dialer, and all the consumer-grade information. So all of a sudden, you know, as a transport operator, you can say, here's my pickup and delivery app, or here's my warehousing app, and here's my push-to-talk line. And here's the 11 people I can talk and the emergency number that I can go out on. And all of a sudden, you've still got a device that replaces the radio, replaces any data terminal, but allows them to do all of their business functions.
I mean, often when I ring a courier company to see, you know, what time between 9 and 5 they're going to arrive, and whether that means 6 o'clock, you know, you ring and they've got no idea. Oh, they're on the road. It's like, well, I say to these people, it's 2016. Why can't you call them? I mean, don't they even have a mobile phone? And clearly with this, if you had some sort of cradle in the car, push to talk, it's like, well, customer XYZ's calling, you know, when do you think you'll be there? Oh, push the button, well, I think I'll be there at 4, and then I can get an instant reply. I mean, hopefully this enables more of that to actually seamlessly happen.
Alex, it can enable more of that to seamlessly happen, but what I'd like to see is, I'd like to see our transport operators moving even beyond that and actually have an automatic scheduling. They all have GPS devices.
Yeah.
They should be able to give you window slots, and I know Tile is working on, you know, scheduled.
Well, 9 to 12 or 12 to 5 is just not precise enough,
but
not
if someone
granular.
says 11:30 to 12,
Yeah.
or when you call up and I can say he's 2.5 minutes away because he's currently around the
Yeah,
corner
no
of this location.
telco does that, no courier does that yet, and I look forward to it happening.
Yeah, well, I can certainly assure you that our customers like Tile are starting to think about how they can move to that level. So it'll be sooner rather than later. It's not a pie in the sky dream anymore. The technology is really out there and enabling people.
I think that a big part of the challenge is defining the right scope for a company like Tile, right? So if you think about end-to-end visibility from a supply chain perspective, that pretty much means, in its purest sense, from factory gate to point of consumption. Okay? So in between all of that, that product is outside of your responsibility probably 95% of the time. You touch it along the way. So absolutely, there's a race among third-party logistics companies to provide proper track and trace for any reasonable question that comes.
I remember complaining to a PR company or to a courier company that I can track my pizza, but I can't track my parcel with GPS.
That's
you know,
right.
what's that?
That's right.
Yeah.
So how does this start able to improve your cost of usage?
Yeah. So, well, there's a couple of key ways. First of all, the user experience has shown to us that the lack of tilt and verify is definitely a time saving for our people. The scanning function is a lot stronger, so you can scan from further away, for example. And of course, the battery life is better. Okay, so those sort of three things from an academic point of view are the reasons that our people are getting, have shown to be more productive on the tool. We think longer term, the fact that we can pair this device with forklifts, with software, with our security software, and track the movement of these devices through our warehouse, along with the movement of our forklifts, along with any other kind of movement we want to track, will obviously mean that we can design our track and trace within the warehouse as a suite of systems, of which the TC8000 is an important part. And not only that, it will make us a lot safer. So, for example, we've got unauthorised access areas in our DCs at the moment. Most of the time, we govern access to those areas by physical human intervention. You can't go in there, etc., etc. Devices like this allow you to track and trace movements all day long from all of you people. You can set alerts for if anyone goes into an unauthorised access area. We're rolling out a lot of safety around things like not going into areas that are tagged out. You might have an electrical switchboard there. You don't want a casual who's first day on the job just unwittingly walking into an unauthorised area. Well, these kind of devices give us a guarantee that that won't happen.
If they're carrying it.
We're about to move out with technology that actually can be worn on the person, that can tie back to the two. So a person operating that can see that somebody else will within the forklift. So we're starting to work with the likes of Tolls on tying two things together. OH&S is not a major talking point around general productivity, but the cost of safety of where it's coming forward. So we're working on positional tracking of tracking a person with one of those, but also somebody who's got an ID badge and tying the two together so that you could track those people around the facility, and then you could alert the operator or a forklift operator. So a forklift operator is coming around a corner and they know, for example, that there's 3 people that are walking around that corner. They can be automatically slowed down by engine management of the forklift as we tie it all together. That's the type of next generation of safety as well as productivity that we're working with the likes of Toll around.
And from a productivity perspective, remember, in today's world, people love touchscreens, right? So people are inclined to use this device in their day-to-day actions inside the warehouse. We're more likely to do that today. So to give you an example, if we can turn on the camera function in these devices, for example, we can start to use live pictures as part of our standard operating procedures, induct people straight off the gun when they walk in.
Just as I sort of demonstrated there, they can start to go through. So a new training cost is, instead of just directing it, running a video and actually doing live pic scanning as they're coming through and using this.
So it's very user-friendly despite the actual part being and all the editorial plus.
That's right. That's right. I think you kind of need a critical mass of advocates, right? There'll always be people who don't advocate for it, so the equation becomes, we have more advocates than non-advocates. Eventually, well, pretty much all the non-advocates eventually get on board, right? It's because there's a dominant advocacy.
So who do you expect to follow suit? What are the transport companies out there, major follow suit?
Is that a question to me?
Well, I'll tell you from a Zebra perspective that Toll have the leadership at the moment because they were our alpha customer, but we are having discussions, and I look after the entire Asia Pacific market, and there's transport operators from around Asia Pacific very, very interested in India, parts of Singapore and Asia. We probably expect most of the major operators to eventually move towards this type of technology. As we said, it's a disruptive technology. As the adopters are using it, we don't see a major shift this year. We see it as a minor shift this year, but a major shift being into next year. But the entire research we're getting is all touch. The entire research is moving away from keyboard. So we think it's a progression time, and so it's a when, not an if.
Yeah.
If that's the best way to put it.
And look, from our perspective, we firmly believe that we're at least 12 months ahead of any of our competitors in this space in mastering this solution. As again, I have to come back to, it's all about the partnership with Zebra for Toll. So in the next 12 months, the next big thing, that's what we're working on.
You did say that the price was not very different to the last price. Can you just explain to me how much it is?
I mean, depending on quantity, size of customer, M&A, that type of thing. Typically, this type of device sort of hits the end user pricing in the $2,500 sort of price range.
The list
price is slightly under 3,000 US.
So it really depends on who the company is, what the size, quantity, relationship. So if you've got a small operator who's coming in, they would still pay about that same sort of price point, that $2,000 price point for a traditional terminal. So it's not anything in that way, but the features and the futuristic. What I'm going out talking to people about is, as I said, as Toll had, is future-proofing your operation. You may think you want to put in a new warehouse management system or a new freight system, but you don't know where it goes. Your traditional green screen environment can be operated on the new technology. So if you come out with a new package in 12, 18 months' time, you're not going to throw away your old equipment, where the older equipment can't actually be upgraded to the newer technology.
Can this lead to less forklifts?
Potentially.
Potentially. Remember though, most people who use this device aren't forklift drivers. They're pedestrian pick and pack people because they're picking at that very minor detail level, like
You're a
a
pick
single
trolley or
toothbrush,
something.
etc., etc. So,
But it's about how you change the pick profile. So what you may find is that Toll can use this in some ways and change some of their profile. Like in some situations they may decide they can use forklifts more, in other situations they'll use trolleys. But this, for example, has a trolley bracket that sits on. So as somebody comes across, they could be doing larger items trolleys where they don't need to use a forklift. It really just depends on the freight profile of the operator rather than necessarily will it mean one way or another.
plus, technologies like this can be paired with forklift software and operating technologies to again track and trace your interaction between your forklifts and your people, and deliver again better safety environment as well.
So does this mean Toll has an exclusivity timeline with this device?
No, not really. I think. Look, this has been a fairly in good faith partnership, and what that means for us is we don't need to sort of exclude or restrict each other from using this technology freely. From the Toll perspective, we don't feel we need to go further than that because this experience has shown us that once we come out the other side and partner with Zebra in a launch like this, we can confidently say we're at least 12 months ahead of our competition. Now, in 12 months' time, if our competition takes this up and we're still using it, then the next 12 months of this partnership has not been productive from our perspective. So that's the way we look at
They
this.
want to be looking at what we're doing next.
Yeah.
And that's where we're partnering, meaning there's no exclusivity, but they've had pretty much a 6-month use leadership and a 6-month working beforehand. So they've, as Gavin just said, they've had a 12-month advantage over any of their competition.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's always about leapfrogging everybody. I said there's a lot of food here, so why don't we let everybody eat, and Gavin and I aren't going anywhere, so we can do some more questions afterwards and things like that. But please,
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.